there has to be, if we continue down this path, a form of a Nuremberg trials with Trump and his regime officials. You know, the U.S. is not a signatory to the International Court of Justice.
Correct.
But if you commit crimes in countries that are, you can be charged, even though you're not a national of those countries. El Salvador is a signatory to the International Court of Justice.
Oh, interesting.
If Donald Trump and Kristi Noem and Marco Rubio and Thom Hartmann commit crimes against humanity in El Salvador by what they're doing by sending people there who have not been convicted of crimes, knowing that it's a death camp, then arguably they could be charged.
On the line with us, our dear friend and brilliant, one of the nation's most brilliant talk show hosts, Dean Obeidallah. He's on Sirius XM Progress Channel every day, 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time every weekday. He also publishes a brilliant newsletter. It's free, and you get it in your email just about every day. It's called the Dean's Report. Just go over to Substack.com and type in Dean's Report, and it'll pop right up. Or the website is Dean Obeidallah, if you can remember how to spell it, OBEIDALLAH.substack.com. Dean Obeidallah, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Tom. That intro was so good I should just leave now. I think I peaked in the intro. I can only disappoint people from here. Because everything you said was so nice. So I so appreciated being needy. I sincerely appreciate all the nice words.
I expect my 10%, Dean.
I will be sending it.
But I kid. So Nuremberg trials, your rant this morning was particularly poignant. Tell us about it.
Well, look, I think we touched on it Monday. You were on my show, and that the idea is that when Trump is done, when all of this is over, there has to be, if we continue down this path, a form of a Nuremberg trials with Trump and his regime officials. And to remind everyone, after World War II, there was a Nuremberg trials in Germany of the Nazi officials. And many, not all, were convicted. Some were sentenced to prison, some sentenced to death. But if there's crimes against humanity, and there are by Trump already, with deportations of U.S. citizens, keeping people in a prison in El Salvador, even though the Supreme Court said return him, facilitate return, like last night Donald Trump said to Terry Moran, I could get him back, but I'm not going to. He is willfully and openly defying our court system, and I think this is just the beginning. So this continues on this path, if there's crimes against humanity. I don't know how we actually get to that. You need a conquering power to liberate us. But if we're liberated by us, I hope that we have that kind of people's tribunal when this is over.
You know, when I was on your program on Monday, or your show, I specifically said that I had been rolling around in my head the idea of writing a piece calling for a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, in which nobody goes to jail, or maybe just a small handful of people. But people are basically, if they want to be forgiven, they have to confess their sins. I think the important thing here, Dean, whether we do it as Nuremberg trials or whether we do it as a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, is that we educate Americans to the fact that they have been lied to by Donald Trump for the better part of 9 years, repeatedly, over and over and over and over again. Many of these lies are extraordinarily destructive, not just to our society, but to our democracy and our government, and that they acknowledge those lies. I mean, so what in your mind is the distinction? I mean, the Holocaust was a hell of an event, right? I mean, they killed something like 10 or 12 million people, 6 million Jews. I mean, I don't think you could not have the Nuremberg trials after the Holocaust. But Trump has not initiated a Holocaust. He's done some really terrible stuff. But, we have not yet even reached the level of Hungary or Russia or arguably even Poland under Duda, in terms of oppression. So at what point is it so bad that you have to do a Nuremberg trial instead of the equivalent of a Truth and Reconciliation Commission? Or do you see the two things mutually exclusive? Could we do both?
Sure. Let's do both, Tom. Let's have a lot of fun when this is over, all right? So we're going to have the Truth and Reconciliation for the good people. We can reach out to them. I'll say this from a legal point of view, because I was doing some research. The U.S. is not a signatory to the International Court of Justice.
Correct.
But if you commit crimes in countries that are, you can be charged, even though you're not a national of those countries. El Salvador is a signatory to the International Court of Justice.
Oh, interesting.
If Donald Trump and Kristi Noem and Marco Rubio and Thom Hartmann commit crimes against humanity in El Salvador by what they're doing by sending people there who have not been convicted of crimes, knowing that it's a death camp, then arguably they could be charged. Now, they won't be prosecuted until they leave U.S. soil. but there's only a few countries they can go to where they would not be the threat of arrest hanging over them at all times. So look, this is a real thing that I want to see happen. I want to see the ICJ do an investigation. I want to see them charge Donald Trump if the evidence is there. And we're going to see. Look, if the worst of this is today and everything gets better, then maybe not. But every instinct I have tells me we're going to get worse, not better. And Donald Trump last night, Tom, at his rally last night, he showed images to the crowd of migrants coming off a plane in El Salvador, being roughed up by the guards, being their head forcibly shaved, being dragged, and the crowd cheered. Okay, the crowd cheered and began chanting USA. That is more bone-chilling than anything Donald Trump says. Yeah. He is priming them. He is getting them ready. The celebration of cruelty is part of who MAGA is. We all know that. That was very jarring what happened last night at that rally. I was just watching clips of it. I couldn't believe that. And again, that could be harkened back to something under Hitler's Germany. Yeah. To be blunt, it's very startling.
The other piece that you wrote at the Dean's Report, we're talking with Dean Obeidallah, the other piece that you wrote that struck me this week was about Trump's collapsing poll numbers. And what that, triggers for me in my mind is at what point do dictators typically take off the mask? When was it that Putin actually started arresting protesters? At what point did Viktor Orban start arresting people for posting against him on Facebook? And my sense of it is, and I haven't done the research to back this up, but I probably should and write a piece about it myself. But my sense of it is that they are essentially forced to take off the mask and start using violence against their own people when their popularity starts to slip and they see the very real possibility that they could lose power. What say you?
Tom, you're 100% right based on history. I just interviewed, and he's in Germany, he's a professor. He wrote a book. His name is Marcel Dursis, and he wrote a book about how tyrants fall and how nations could be saved. I just interviewed him from Germany yesterday. We're going to play on my show tomorrow night. Mm-hmm. And in the book, he makes the point that it's counterintuitive to some, but even tyrants and dictators want to be popular, or at least appear popular for the psychological advantage of people thinking, well, I can't oppose this person.
They need that perception of popularity to prevent protest against them.
And that's a big part of it. And what they do in the beginning, Tom, is exactly what Trump is doing now. What they do in the beginning when they start losing a little bit of popularity is targeted repression. That's the term. Targeted, very specific. Like Donald Trump is going after lawyers and law firms and media outlets. You don't do the broad-based oppression until at the end, because that's naturally going to cause a massive backlash, especially in a country like this where our DNA is freedom and democracy. So Trump will continue down the path of targeted repression, sign executive orders to go after everyone, newscasters. There's probably going to be no limit to what we're going to see. And I think the media has really failed at covering. We've never had a president target law firms, media outlets, individual lawyers who represent the people Trump doesn't like. We've never seen this, and it's not ending. It's going to only get worse. Even Maggie Haberman, who I really don't like much, but said as much yesterday on CNN. She expects it to get worse going forward. So right now, targeted repression. But that's why Trump's freaking out about the poll numbers. He doesn't want his base to believe those numbers, because if you do, then they might go like, well, if he's really unpopular, what's going on? So he's got to convince them. Even the Fox News poll is BS, and they should be criminally investigated. That's what he called for in writing, and he's trying to suppress them and change their conduct. So you're right on, Tom. Your instincts and based your understanding of history is exactly what Marcel Dursis said in his book.
Is there any evidence that the Justice Department actually is investigating any of these polling organizations now in response to Trump's demand?
Well, we know there's lawsuits, right? The lawsuit against the Iowa pollster and the other lawsuits against 60 Minutes. Brendan Carr, the head of the FCC, one of the Project 2025 architects, is openly investigating PBS, NPR, ABC, CBS. They're trying to prevent the merger or hang over a merger deal with CBS that they have. With
Sherry Redstone
that they're trying to
flipped out.
Exactly. So
she wants
and that's what the 60 Minutes executive producer talked about in his resignation letter. Yeah. He cited that very merger. So, look, what's really going on behind the scenes? We're going to find out more, but we know they've begun the investigation. And we're just 101 days in, Tom. 101 days in. And they've already begun to weaponize the government in ways we have never, ever seen before. Never.
Yeah.
Not even Nixon did this.
No, this is Joe McCarthy's wet dream. I mean, this is McCarthy wanted to turn America fascist, and in fact he had some substantial links to Nazi Germany that Rachel Maddow has documented extensively. Pretty amazing stuff. Dean Obeidallah, you can hear him right here on Sirius XM Progress, channel 127, 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time, and check out his newsletter at substack.com, The Dean's Report. Dean, thanks so much.
Thanks, Tom. Great seeing you.
Great talking with you.